Testing 1, 2. Oh, good grief. I'm on. Finally. Gosh. Sorry, guys. I think I need counseling after that. That was insane. Hello, everyone, by the way. And thank you to the 123 of you. Sorry about all this interference. Thanks to all of you for persevering despite this horrendous wait. I'm still mildly perturbed by what's just transpired, but never mind. We're here now. Before I kind of really get stuck in, can you guys let me know what the sound is like and what the video is like and whether everything is roughly acceptable? I now have a weird hissing noise in my ear. How can I fix that? So, all right. So Lee Grieve is saying both perfect. Everyone's saying sound and video okay, good, because I spent a lot of time getting it all set up. And I've obviously driven sound equipment here. So yeah, this is my 40th birthday live stream. And my actual birthday is tomorrow. So that's when Deanna and the children and I will be having a nice family day. We're actually going to be, we're hiring a boat and we're going to go off exploring in our boat. So should be enormous fun. Now, I asked earlier if there were any questions on Twitter, because this is an Ask Cedars episode, and hardcore Cedars fans will know. Just 1 minute, darling. Hardcore Cedars fans will know that Ask Cedars was a series of Q&A videos, which I haven't been very diligent with in terms of keeping them coming. But it is indeed a series where I attempt to answer questions. But perhaps before I do that, one or two of you have asked if you can see Jessica. So, Jessica, darling, just mind out for the cables. And let's get you... Come this way. So... Okay, so... Hang on. Watch out for the cable. So, Jessica, this is your show now. You're taking over on Dee's YouTube channel. So what do you want to say to all the boys and girls? Hang on, I'll put the headphones on. First of all, you need to say, thank you, Mormon Jesus.
Thank you, Mormon Jesus.
For that incredibly generous, and as well, thank you to, thank you to Becky as well for some very, very kind and generous super chats. But so, Jessica, what do you have to say?
Thank you, Becky.
Yes, thank you, Becky. Now, what do you have to say to all the boys and girls? What have you been doing today?
I have been to the beach.
You went to the beach, but it was a bit windy, wasn't it?
Yeah. This is my LOL doll.
That's your LOL doll. Should we show the viewers a bit closer what it looks like? So that's your LOL doll. And what kind of LOL doll is it?
A seafood toy.
Yeah. And do you like it?
Yeah.
And what other toy did you buy?
Penguin.
A penguin.
That's with a hat.
Yes. Can you hear your voice through the microphone?
Yeah.
And are you going to sing a song? Now's your chance, and then you have to go to bed. So do you want to sing a song before you go to bed?
Daddy,
yeah.
You have to hold them.
The microphone's already here, so you have to sing. So you're going to go to bed, but before you go to bed, do you want to sing a quick song?
When I just go, whoa, and just go, oh, I go, oh, wow. You're making me laugh.
You're doing a very good job. Do you want to sing any more?
Be like it. this is serious, so I don't laugh.
Okay, I'm serious now.
Let's go up. You have to hear like you're serious.
I am serious.
No, I mean for mommy.
Mummy, you have to be serious.
When does go up? When does go up? Whoa, 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 whoa.
Well, Jessica, that was beautiful. And you'll notice, guys, that Jessica's t-shirt says, dream it, want it, get it. So very good advice.
Can I please see what we filmed?
Well, you'll see in the morning. You have to go to bed now. It's way past your bedtime. And I don't want you to take over my channel. So that's for Sherry and Kim, who demanded, in fact, to see Jessica on the live stream. So now I've wrestled control of my channel back from the next generation of Cedars. I can get stuck into some of these questions that were asked on Twitter. Let me just bear with me a moment. So, by the way, if anyone is interested in signing my daughter to perhaps a record label, I will be fielding any emails or phone calls along those lines. So let's see. Okay, so M. Kasparian at Prince Mushkin. I don't know whether to use the name or the handle. I guess I should use the handle because then people can follow them if they want to. Says, hey Lloyd, big fan of yours right here. How quick did you transition from believing to not believing? Well, Emma Kasparian, it wasn't instantly. I did go through kind of a process of considering myself to be like a skeptical Christian, and then calling myself an agnostic, and then embracing agnostic atheism. So I actually think in a way everyone is agnostic, really, even religious people, because being religious is about faith, isn't it? It's about believing things whether you can necessarily prove them or not. So belief is one thing, knowledge is another, and Gnostic or agnostic deals with what we know. And I would argue that even if religious people are very, very devout and very sincere in what they believe, what they know is something else entirely. At WT Fader says, good morning from California, Lloyd. With the annual meeting coming next month, it seems that is now the vehicle for batshit crazy new light. What do you anticipate Watchtower throwing out this year? Well, I don't know about new light. I am kind of expecting them to ditch the magazines at some point. And when I say the magazines, I mean like the public magazines, which are kind of already hanging on by a thread. I think that they will at some point ditch Watchtower and Awakes for the public entirely and switch to just the study article. And I'm interested to know whether that happens at this annual meeting. I think it's going to happen eventually. As for teachings, goodness knows. There's been a few interesting developments recently, hasn't there, with the Great Tribulation and them saying that basically preparing Jehovah's Witnesses for the governing body to vanish, for members of the other sheep to kind of take over in the administration of the organization once the anointed are. They don't use the word raptured, but that's what they mean. Once the anointed are raptured, just before Armageddon. And it wouldn't surprise me especially with the amount of legal issues that the governing body are now facing, as we've reported on Watchtower in Focus, it wouldn't surprise me if they were deluded enough to trigger that little bit of groundwork they've done in terms of saying, well, you know, over to you guys. And they just kind of do one. They just scarper. They exit stage left and leave control of the organization to their minions and take the money and run, I guess. So that's interesting. But obviously, I don't think you'd really hear about that at an annual meeting. That would just happen, wouldn't it? Let's see. At so_evel, as in evil, I think, says, if you could sit down with anyone associated with the Watchtower, living or dead, for a no-holds-barred interview, who would it be and why? So I glanced at this earlier. So I have, in fairness, had a little bit of time to ponder it. And it's a hard one, actually. My initial thought was, oh, well, obviously Ray Franz. Of course you'd want to interview Ray Franz. But if it's living or dead, anyone associated with Watchtower, as a YouTuber who covers Jehovah's Witnesses, I'd be stupid to not want to interview a current governing body member. And really, there's no other one that I personally, you all know what I'm going to say here, there's no one I'd rather interview personally than Anthony Morris. But that comes with a caveat, which is that I wouldn't necessarily expect any of the governing body members to give me honest answers. I don't think it would be necessarily a meaningful conversation from the point of view of, of learning more, or I don't know, getting an accurate picture of what's going on with the organization. But it would certainly be an interesting spectacle. But I'm not expecting ever to get the opportunity to even share a room with a governing body member. I think it's a fairly safe bet that I'll go to my grave without ever being in the same room as a governing body member. But I'm willing to be pleasantly surprised if any of the governing body are watching. At Browning Dion says, hello, Lloyd. I began watching your videos in 2013 as I was waking up. The first one being an email from my dad and my apostasy trial. You have inspired so many who are just waking up. Who was your inspiration, if there was one? And then Dion says, today is my birthday too. I'm a bit older. Well, happy birthday to you too. Dion, I think that's your name, Dion. Apologies for the dog, by the way. I was really hoping that dog is an Alsatian, for those of you who are interested. Because this is a rather nice balcony. I was gutted that the live stream started so late. Thanks, YouTube. Because just a few minutes ago, there was the last kind of flares of orange and blue from the sunset over there. And you guys all missed it while I was frantically trying to get the live stream up and running. But I was really hoping that this dog wouldn't start up. Hopefully you guys can't hear it too much, but I certainly can. So happy birthday, Dion. Who has inspired me? It's a good, in terms of actual inspiration, and because I've obviously learned a lot from the likes of Ray Franz and Paul Grundy. They have given me kind of the tools to unlock my mind and hopefully share information with others. In terms of actual inspiration, I think inspiration is a very strong word, and I don't know whether they have inspired me so much. I have been inspired very much by Christopher Hitchens, who, if you've seen some of the recent videos from my bunker, one of my viewers, a good friend actually, David Schmidt in Australia, sent in a metal picture of like a how would you say, a monochrome of Christopher Hitchens, which is actually in the bunker now. Presumably David is a fan as well. But yeah, I've always been inspired by the late Christopher Hitchens, and not just what he had to say, not just the substance, but also the spirit in which he said it, and the method he had, and the kind of fearlessness that he had. There's actually now a Hitchens quote on the wall of the bunker, which is my favorite quote of Hitchens. I'm going to try and remember it word for word. Never be a spectator of unfairness and stupidity. Seek out argumentation for its own sake. The grave will supply plenty of time for silence. And just those last words in particular, the grave will supply plenty of time for silence, has been like my guiding mantra, has really inspired me. Certainly over the last few years of my activism, when I'm saying things that I know will annoy people, and I'm not just talking about Jehovah's Witnesses, I'm talking about ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, I'm talking about people who supposedly share my journey, and I'm saying things I know are going to annoy people. But once you're dead, you know, you've lost your opportunity to say what needs to be said. So that's been a real inspiration, those words in particular. So I hope that answers your question. Peter Zawinski, I should stick to the handle, at SkyVegan06, says, Dear Lloyd, did you have any JW friends who decided to remain in the organization even though they knew that everything was just a lie? Yes, I did. I did have one friend of mine stands out in particular. I really hope you guys aren't picking up that dreadful crackling noise in the background, by the way. Let me just try and jiggle a few cables. It's at least a little bit better, I think. No. I just wish it would at least it's died down a little bit. Okay, so one of my great regrets. Oh, there's the dog. One of the great regrets from my activism is that for all of the hundreds of people who I knew and who knew me when I was a Jehovah's Witness, and you know, it's not. I'm not bragging or anything. I did literally know hundreds of people at one point. And despite knowing, because I was a bit of a social butterfly, I spent a lot of fuel as a poor pioneer driving ridiculous distances, trying to compensate for the fact that my life was extremely dull by having a very active social life. And in the course of pursuing that active social life, I met a lot of people. So I knew hundreds of people. And I would say that only a dozen, or maybe less than a dozen, I've since been able to kind of reconnect with on the other side. And I think that's really sad. I think considering that there were so many, and I'm touched as well when I read some of these messages attributing my work with people who I've never met waking up. And I'm touched by that. But just from a purely selfish standpoint, it would be nice if there could have been a few more of my friends, of people I actually knew as a Jehovah's Witness. It would be lovely if some more of them could have woken up. And there's one friend in particular who I reached out to, and I forget, I'm not going to repeat verbatim what was said, but I just remember the gist of it was, you know, look, we're friends, and everything's good between us, and I admire what you're doing and agree with what you're doing, but as far as everyone's concerned, I've got to, you know, continue with what I'm doing and pretend that this religion means something to me. That was more or less the gist. Maybe I'm oversimplifying things, but yeah, I have had that kind of conversation, which is very sad and in a way indicative of the kind of group that we're dealing with. Fazamania says, in light of the ex-Muslim community organizing a large ad campaign highlighting their plight, can you foresee the XJW community doing the same? Fazamania, you refer to the Awesome Without Allah campaign, if I'm not mistaken. And yes, I think it would be excellent if we could do an Awesome Without Jehovah campaign. I would certainly get behind that. Obviously, we're not squeamish, are we, as XJWs, when it comes to, speaking out on YouTube, on Twitter, on Facebook, etc. But anything that we can do to amplify our voices along those lines, because these days people really do seem to respond to hashtags, don't they? So if we can give that some traction, and if I can assist in any way, I certainly will. At this point, I would really like to order a drone strike on the Alsatian over the. No, I'm joking. I would never order a drone. Actually, hang on. No, I wouldn't order a drone strike on any living being, with only one or two exceptions. But yeah, the dog is definitely trying my patience. Where are we now? Still one or two questions. Let's see. Yeah, so John Anderson, John and 79, said your Freemasons video has a lot of downvotes, has a lot of upvotes as well, and seems to stir up a lot of controversy within a certain part of the XJW community. Well, this is what I was talking about earlier, John. Why do you think that is? So, well, first of all, I kind of knew that the Freemasons video task that my patrons gave me was kind of a poison chalice. And I remember kind of thanking them with gritted teeth when they voted for that video. And even though I was reticent to do it, my thinking was, well, maybe there is something to be said for debunking something if there are people who are still on the fence and still unsure. Because there were even, before I researched it, and I did research it, there were even one or two things I was unsure about. I always had it in the back of my mind that Charles Taze Russell was buried next to a temple, next to a lodge, a Freemasons lodge. Not true. When you actually look into it, the lodge was built in 1996. Charles Taze Russell was built on an apparently Catholic. Charles Taze Russell was buried on an apparently Catholic graveyard. So, and that was one of the most compelling things that was kind of lurking in the back of my mind. So, if I was a little bit conflicted, I wouldn't even say conflicted, but if I had confusion on it, I can only imagine, lots of people being similarly, confused or conflicted. And so maybe from that point, from that perspective alone, it was worth doing a video. So even though I was reticent, I still thought, no, maybe they've got a point here. And I think they did have a point. And to be fair to my patrons, they have picked, they've been very good in picking topics. We have a monthly vote where there's a choice of 9 video topics, and those on the Medo-Persia level of my Patreon get 1 vote, and they get to choose which topic they would like to see a video on. So, yeah, so the Freemasons won one of the months, and I knew it would stir up some controversy, but I'm going to be honest, I didn't expect it to ruffle quite so many feathers. I mean, good grief. Clearly a sizable chunk of the ex-Jehovah's Witness movement, I hate to use the word community for reasons I needn't go into here, but a sizable chunk of the movement, it seems to be their kind of their favorite toy almost. It's something they're very fond of, and there've been 1 or 2 suggestions in the comments as to why that might be. And one suggestion, which I kind of lean towards, is that it seems that an overwhelming majority, not everyone, but a clear majority of those who are upset about me dismissing a link with Freemasonry are religious, are Christian. And it would make sense if you are Christian, number one, to be fearful of Freemasonry if you believe that Freemasons are in league with Satan, for example, if they're part of the occult, if they're leading people towards the Dark Lord. You're going to be very fearful of Freemasonry. Clearly, that's not going to be an issue if you're an atheist, because you don't believe in Satan and you consider all religions or all religious movements to be equally fallacious. And another theory is that if you are religious and you want to, having exited one religion, you want to reassure yourself that you've moved on to something that is legit, that you're never going to have to move on then to a third religion, let's say. It helps if you have something to contrast it with. So you're going to maybe want other religions where you can point to them and say, well, my religion is right and that religion is wrong because of X, Y, Z. And it's probably useful when you're looking back on Jehovah's Witnesses as a Christian to say, and another reason why, that religion isn't right, but mine is right, is because of this link with Freemasonry, and it's kind of a comparing, contrasting thing. So that's I guess it would make sense if that were the reason, but it's not really something I intend to devote too much time to in terms of research. And another question, I hope probably I've offended even more people just saying that, but I can only, as Hitch said, the grave will supply plenty of time for silence. I can only be honest. And what's really nice, by the way, is that after that Freemasons video is I had comments from Freemasons, because I said one or two negative things about Freemasons in the video. And I had one or two Freemasons say that was a fair video. That was, I can respect that. I enjoyed it, etc. And that, I found that very touching. And I think I'm full of respect for viewers who are religious and who can who allow themselves to be challenged by another viewpoint. So they're not just expecting me to repeat their ideas to them. They want to be challenged. They want to hear other ideas, even if they disagree with them. They don't feel threatened by opposing viewpoints to the extent that they feel they need to lash out. And I think that can be said of the overwhelming majority of John Cedars subscribers, I'm very glad to say. And I'll just take one more question from the Twitter, because I'm mindful that there's a few of you, gosh, 367. I wasn't even looking. Wow. Oh, and there's a super chat. I hope I've not missed too many super chats. The higher evolutionary, thank you so much. That's a very generous gift. I wish you a very happy birthday. Although you are a humble guy, you are indeed a legend and deserve all the good things life will afford you. Wow. Well, you've put me, you've given me a punishing task, if I am humble, to read that. And again, thank you so much for your generous support of the channel. I'm going to see if I can go back on some of these comments that I've been missing. I do apologize. I just wanted to get through the Ask Cedars because I asked for questions on Twitter. And I did have a question from, Vigzork Poranek. I've probably butchered that. It looks to me a little bit Polish, that name, which is interesting because I'm going to Poland this month, in fact. Very much looking forward to going to Warsaw to shoot a YouTube documentary. Again, thanks to the support of my patrons who make it possible for me to be a professional activist. I can just say, right, I'm going to Poland for a week, and I'm going to try and document the work that's going on there, and try and find out why Poland is shedding so many Jehovah's Witnesses. What are activists doing? So I'm going to be going there, and let me see if I can. I can't even remember the dates. So it's the 20. Let me see. It's the 23rd to the 27th. I'm going to be in Warsaw, and there is going to be a meetup in Warsaw if you can make it. So if you happen to be either in Poland or not far from Warsaw, and you fancy coming along, or maybe you want to hop on a plane, I guess the best thing to do is to tweet to me, or you could maybe email the email at JW Survey, and I'll try and involve you in the arrangements. So, but what prompted that was that the name looked slightly Polish. So sorry for the tangent. It's Tamelia is the name, and Tamelia says, "What do you think about the information that Ted Jarrads was a pedophile?" I believe it's credible. I think that I'm going to be very careful with what I say. I think it would be nice if we could have documented proof that it were true. And it wouldn't surprise me if at some point in the future such documented proof emerged. That's all I can really say. But I do think that there is something to that particular claim. So let's see. Let me go back to the live stream. Thank you, by the way, to all of those who kindly sent in questions for Ask Cedars. And I'm just going to scroll up. So Swiatosi says, "Be ready to be interviewed in Poland. Happy birthday, Lloyd." Gosh, do I need to be ready to be interviewed? I'm not sure I'm comfortable with being on the receiving end of an interrogation. I'm usually the one that dishes interrogations out. Okay. And okay, let me just scroll up and see what's happening. I've been neglecting you all, and I feel terrible. Mel Costa, thank you so much for your super chat. Mel Costa says, "Happy birthday." You know what? It's so odd to be turning 40 tomorrow, Mel. I think that I don't know whether any of you watching remember turning 40. I don't know what the average age demographic of my audience is, but it's certainly an interesting age to turn, because when you're in your 20s, you can kind of remember hanging out with people who were in their 30s. So when you're in your 30s, you still feel like you could just about pass as being in a young crowd. And then when the clock kind of slides to 40, you're like, no, that ship has long sailed. I'm no longer a kid. I am now officially just a man, and I'm not young anymore. And frankly, I'm halfway through this thing called life. Gosh, it's weird. I hate to get all philosophical on you all like that. So Ashley Life says, "Happy birthday." Thank you, Ashley, for that lovely super chat. Moulin Rouge says, "Happy birthday." Thank you, Moulin, and thank you so much for the super chat. And can I just say that it's very humbling to be doing this birthday live stream with 365 watching at this time. Now, I've exhausted the Ask Cedars, more or less. I think there were one or two more, but I'm interested to answer any questions in the live chat. So just give me a moment to scroll up and read some of the comments. So Eyes on the Prize says the best part of getting older is being okay not to be a people pleaser all the time. Life's too short. Eyes on the Prize, you speak wisdom. Let's see. Oh gosh, another super chat. So Southern. Oh wow. Hi, Southern Boars Lady. Southern Boars Lady is well known to me as a very dedicated subscriber, and she says, "Happy 40th birthday, my Lloyd. Wishing you 40 more." Wow. Can you just imagine 80th birthday live stream? Gosh. And 40 more after that. Well, I hope maybe science will have caught up by then. But regardless, thank you so much, Southern Boars Lady, for your very generous super chat there. Heather William Buell, another frequent viewer, says 44 here. So yes, I remember turning 40. Heather, it's not. What's the protocol here? I'm not sure you should be telling us your age, but I'm sure you look very good for 44. Let's see. Ashley Life says 49, and I will trade you. SW says, "Hey Lloyd, happy birthday. I was 42 this year, not 42, 42." So interesting. While we're on that subject, one or two of you may remember the video I did recently of Jared Scepter, and his story features in the August JW Broadcasting episode, which I'm still working on. I'm still working on the rebuttal to that. And I was planning on doing the rebuttal at the end of August. But when I came across Jared's story, I was so floored by how terrible it was that I just had to. I couldn't put out a generic kind of JW Broadcasting rebuttal and just treat Jared Scepter's story as though it was just part of. No, it needed its own video. And it was only kind of after I'd filmed it that I realized that Jared would have been my age, which is tragic. He was, I think, let me get this right. He was 11 in 1991, and I was 11 in 1991, or for a large part of 1991. So, and here I am celebrating my 40th birthday. And so it just kind of drove home to me just how tragic his loss was. And I intend to do everything I can, aside from the video, to make sure he's always remembered. Because before the JW Broadcasting episode, you could argue that his life was meaningless, or his loss was meaningless. It had that's what's so tragic about it. How can we learn from it if no one knows about it? At least we know about it. And so now his loss is slightly less of a tragedy, because we can at least point to it. And if one person doesn't end up dying because, for example, their parents are moved by the story and decide to stop taking their kids along to the Kingdom Hall, and that person ends up surviving for medical reasons where they otherwise would have martyred themselves, then it's worth it, isn't it? So, yeah, I was really affected, as you can probably tell, by Jared's story. There's some super chats flying in. SW says, "Happy birthday, Lloyd. Your channel was such a comfort when I woke up years after fading. Happy 40th from the UK." The UK. Thank you so much, SW, and thank you for the very generous live chat. Super chat. And while I'm talking about my travel arrangements, you guys might be interested to know that I will be in the UK. I say I will be in the UK, but we're talking about a future time, which is after the proposed Brexit deadline, or at least the current proposed Brexit deadline. It's supposed to be next year, early next year. I'm going to be coming to the UK to, I'm not sure I've said this before on the channel, but I'm going to be coming to the UK to participate in ICSA, in the ICSA inquiry into child sex abuse, as a core participant. And what I get to do as a core participant is assist with, I'm not the only one, by the way. There are other ex-Jehovah's Witnesses who are involved in that capacity. But what we get to do is assist the inquiry with the formulation of questions. So we get to listen to the testimony from Watchtower, and we get to say, well, here's what they're not telling you, and so this is what you ought to ask them next. So I'm very thrilled to be a part of that. So I'm basically going to uproot the family for the weeks that I'm needed and just move us to the UK. So that should be interesting, and I'm very much looking forward to 2020. If I can get to Britain and get back to Croatia, we'll see what the political landscape is then. And thank you so much, David Moore, for your very generous super chat. And that's very kind of you. David says, "Happy birthday, Lloyd." Thank you so much. I'm feeling appreciated, it must be said, viewers, by all of these messages as I scroll through the live chat. Let me just see if I can pick out any more messages. Live for Now says, "Happy birthday, Lloyd, from France. Many French XJW really appreciate your work. Wow. I was an elder during 12 years, and your videos help me in awakening process. Thanks a lot, my friend." Well, merci, monsieur, for that delightful message. I've not spent nearly as much time in France as I would like to. I've been through Calais a lot, but the only real time I've kind of been on holiday in France was we went to Paris for our honeymoon once. We went to Paris as part of our honeymoon. It was like a trip across Europe. Loved it, but no, it's lovely to think of French XJWs, and I hope I have an opportunity to come and meet you guys in person at some point. That would be lovely. I see Heather has been extremely generous with the super chat. Thank you, Heather. Hope you have a wonderful birthday tomorrow. Love the work you do. Keep up the great work. Thank you so much, Heather. That's very kind. I think this is a question from Jenna Wilk. If JW were to end their shunning policy and your father reached out to you to re-establish a relationship, how do you think you would move forward? I actually wrote to my dad recently, and I'm not fully comfortable with sharing the letter yet. Maybe I might at some point in the future. But I've basically made it clear to Dad exactly how things would be kind of moving forward, and I've also made it clear to him, I hope, that how can I put it? I've reconciled to the fact that it's very likely that we'll never be reunited. But if he were to want to reunite, either because they got rid of shunning, which is unlikely, or because he just woke up, or for some other reason, he knows that my door is open to him, more than anything, because I think it's tragic that Jessica is already, and you guys saw Jessica earlier at the beginning of the live stream. I think it's tragic that Jessica's made it to 5 years of age and still doesn't know that she has a granddad on my side of the family, or yeah, she's confused on all that. So I think that's tragic, and so I'd want him in my life for that reason alone, really, because I feel that when you have a child, you have almost a duty to make sure that they have as much family connection as possible. And yeah, I do my best to patch things up with him myself as much as I can, but there are some things I've made it clear to him that I may have to take to my grave in terms of the way he's managed the situation. That's taken it down a dark path, hasn't it? Sorry about that, everyone. And Frank Jepson. Frank is a wonderful person, by the way. Frank actually participated in the filming of Reclaim Voices. He drove from Denmark to work the sound on the Reclaim Voices documentary. He's one of my patrons. He's a lovely guy, and here he is saying happy birthday, mate, and congrats on getting the dog. I wish I could add on the end, getting the dog nuked, because that's kind of, every time it walks, those are my sentiments. But no, lovely to hear from you, Frank. I don't really want to nuke an Alsatian. It's just, my twisted, warped sense of humor. John Preston says, can you visit Czech as well when you will go to Poland, the Czech Republic? I will need to pass through the Czech Republic, if my information is correct, John. But it's unlikely that I'll have much time to stop if I'm going to have a productive trip. I'm going to have to be very, what's the word? I'm going to have to not stop in the Czech Republic or just stop to refuel. But it would have been nice to do more in the Czech Republic. Thanks, by the way, to the Transfer Factor for your kind super chat. Helen O'Hara says, do you feel it harder on you when your work is bashed by the XJW movement than by active JWs, which, to be honest, usually centers around how hairy you are? I don't think I'm bashed that much by the XJW movement, Helen. I think that, listen, whenever I've been to meetups, I've been to a few meetups now, and it's only ever positive. The people who turn up at meetups, yes, there's always one or two who, I don't know, make you feel a little bit uncomfortable. But for the overwhelming majority of ex-Jehovah's Witnesses who I've actually met in person have been lovely. And as far as those that kind of, I think what it boils down to is that there is a significant percentage of ex-JWs who leave the organization and don't learn to agree to disagree. So that if someone says something that they don't agree with, they want that person destroyed. That's kind of the vibe that I'm getting from them, that they just cannot tolerate people who maybe have a perceived prominence, who have a platform, and they are using that platform to say something that they consider to be a lie, or they consider to be misleading people. And unfortunately, there are ex-Jehovah's Witnesses like that. But it's just part and parcel, really, Helen, of doing the work that I do. It's sad that certainly the resistance to my work has come from ex-Jehovah's Witnesses rather than from Jehovah's Witnesses and Watchtower. But again, you just kind of get used to it, really. You just deal with it because the work's too important. Let's see. And there's the Alsatian again. Where's my drone? Come on. So Ginny Robbins says, hi, Lloyd. What do I tell my dad when he says there's nowhere else to go? I tell him he doesn't need to go anywhere. He could just study a King James Bible, or he could go to a normal church. I actually deal with this question, Ginny, in, I think, chapter 1 or chapter 2 of the Escape book. Lord, whom shall we go away to? You have sayings of everlasting life. It's from the book of John, and it's used by Watchtower, in my opinion, in a very manipulative, disingenuous way, because, of course, the words spoken were spoken by a disciple of Jesus to Jesus directly. They weren't spoken to an organization claiming to represent Jesus, as any organization could claim to represent Jesus. So if you go to, as you point out, another branch of nominal Christianity, how can it be argued that you are leaving Jesus? If he says you're leaving Jesus because you've left an organization that he thinks is representing Jesus, that's clearly a subjective claim, and the burden of proof is on him to prove that his organization has anything to do with representing Jesus. So I suppose that would be my answer. Where's your proof, man? Let me see. I'm just trying to make sure I catch a few questions before I log off. Ashley Barbie says, cheers from Texas. Hi there, Ashley, and thanks for the very generous super chat. And I'm overwhelmed by the modern technology and how I'm able to connect with people. Here I am on my balcony in Croatia with a barking dog below me, and you can see the lights there in the background. I don't know whether you can notice, but let me see. I don't want to mislead you. So those lights sort of there, right? So those lights there, that's a road, but those lights there, that's actually split. So we're not so far away from the center of Split, and this is kind of like I don't know what you'd call it really. It's the Adriatic Sea, but there's an island on the other side, so it's not kind of open water or anything like that. But it's a really nice view, and as I was saying before, when I was trying to start the live stream, you could still see a bit of the view, but unfortunately, it wasn't to be. But there we go. Thank you again for the very generous super chat. Kaylin Van Conant says, happy birthday, Lloyd. After being in the cult for so long, are there still feelings of condemnation when celebrating birthdays and Christmases? If the question is, do you have hang-ups about celebrating birthdays and Christmases? Well, clearly I don't have hang-ups about birthdays because this is a birthday live stream. When it comes to Christmas, it's a bit of a funny one because I just can't get... I've actually done videos talking about why I do celebrate Christmas, and, you know, I've tried to do Christmassy videos, but if I'm being completely honest, I can't get as excited about Christmas as I do about birthdays because of the, you know, the upbringing I've had. It's just difficult. I know that that's not the same for all ex-Jehovah's Witnesses. There are a number who get very excited about Christmas and almost kind of go overboard with it. I personally can't do that. But I don't begrudge anyone who does. And I certainly think that Christmas can be whatever you want to make it. You don't have to be religious to celebrate Christmas. Just as it can be argued, the Christians re-engineered Christmas from the pagans. You know, secular people can do the same thing and just make it about the family being together and exchanging gifts. I'm just taking it. It's all been a bit of a blur. I hope I'm doing okay for time and I'm not kind of in imposing too much on people's schedule, because I realize that I'm doing this live stream while it's still, you know, the working day over there in America, because lots of you will be watching from America. Bro Not Here says, Canada thanks you. Gosh, I don't think all of Canada thanks me, surely, but thank you for the very generous message. Will Wakefield says, hello, Lloyd. When you woke up, how did you deal with the realization there not being an afterlife? I'm 16 and been awake for a few years now, but I still suffer from the existential crisis. Gosh. Well, Will, I definitely wasn't using words like existential crisis when I was 16. So, wow. First of all, well done for watching the channel. I hope that, I don't know what your situation is as a 16-year-old with the organization. Hopefully things are more or less under control, or maybe you're not even a Jehovah's Witness, or I don't know what your situation is. But anyway, lovely to hear from someone of your generation. How did I deal with the afterlife? When I kind of got rid of religion entirely and decided to focus purely on what can be proven and what can't be proven, it kind of was like a weight lifting off my shoulders, because in a way it allowed me to grieve properly for my mother, because if you read my book, you'll know that I lost my mother when I was 21. So to know that she there was no chance of seeing her, even though you would think that would kind of devastate me, in a way it was comforting, because it finally allowed me to grieve and to reconcile with the fact that she was gone. So she was finally gone. I could finally let go of her when I embraced, again, rationality and got rid of the religious side of things. And I've actually done a video on the afterlife. I really hope this dog isn't drowning out the audio, by the way. Can you guys let me know, is the dog really loud, or is it just me? I await your Anthony Morris III. Hi, Anthony. Says, sounds great. Sue Hagen says, it is fine. Audio is so okay, good. It's all right. Just me says the dog is irritating. Diana Phillips says, no, we don't hear the dog. Okay, good. Well, it's just basically a challenge for me then, because this is a directional microphone, so it shouldn't pick up the dog, but I can obviously hear it very clearly. So going back to the question, I've done a video on the afterlife and why I struggle to understand the concept of an afterlife, even given some of the, how can I put it, the parameters placed on an afterlife, and the theology and the narrative that is attached to it. Basically, I think that if you're a believer in an afterlife, you have to believe that when someone you care about dies, they're not really dead. They are existing in some form where they are conscious. And if they're conscious and they are still the same person, and they are watching you from afar and not able to talk to you, in a way, it's like they're being shunned. It's like they're an outcast in a way. And I can imagine that being a very tormenting experience for them. I don't think it's a pleasant thing. And when you bear in mind that when most people cling to an afterlife, it's because it gives them like comfort. I didn't find the concept of an afterlife comforting even when I was a believer. So certainly when I got rid of religion, again, all the jigsaws fell into place, but I struggled to understand kind of rationally and logically how an afterlife would make sense from the perspective of the people who have died, and what happens to them, and where they go, and what they're conscious of and what they're not conscious of. It's all very confusing. I suppose religious people would just say, oh, well, it's all a mystery and we'll find out one day. Facta JW says, Cedars, stop negative. Start to be positive. How your child grow, Everything is okay. Okay. My child grow very well, thank you. Fact, both children are doing very well, and the little you all saw Julia hopefully earlier, and if you missed her, then you'll be able to see her if you rewatch the live stream. But Julia is Jessica's little sister. She's now, I think, 5 months old, and she's just a beautiful, beautiful baby. Julia has this incredible smile where you can almost guarantee if you look at her a certain way, she's just going to beam this smile back at you. She's a very smiley baby. And she also has what I suspect is the Evans baritone. She has a bit of a roar when I don't remember Jessica being quite so loud when she was a baby. Jessica was kind of more shrill, whereas Julia, I think, has my kind of, again, my deep quality of voice, because she really, she has a way of letting you know that something's not quite right. I'll just take, because we're now coming up on the hour mark, so I've surely been doing this now for more than an hour. I'm very grateful, though, that there are 387 watching at this particular moment. So thank you so much to all of you who have tuned in from goodness knows where. It's very humbling and heartening to have you all here join me for my 40th birthday live stream. I am going to take 5 more questions. So let's see. Bro Not Here says 387 free minds. Well, we would certainly hope so, Bro Not Here. Helen O'Hara says, this isn't a question, so I won't count this. One of the most powerful things I heard you say when I first started watching your channel was that thing about children being full of love, in argument to some bozo saying children don't know love. Yeah, that was Stephen Lett who said that children don't inherently know how to love. And I was just thinking immediately of Julia and the way she has nothing but love when you look at her, and she's just a 5-month-old baby. So yeah, let me just scroll up and see if I can isolate 5 questions from obviously a lot of you reacting to some of the things I've already said, which is very nice to see. Just talk among yourselves, really, while I find a question. Sorry, this is harder than I thought it would be. If you have any questions that you want me to answer quickly before I go off, then now is the time, and I'll scroll down in a moment and see if there are any brand new ones. Let's see here. Okay, so Bro Not Here says, how long did it take you to feel truly clear and guilt-free from leaving Celebrations from Canada? Yeah, that was the same one before about Canada. Listen, I think it depends what you mean by truly clear and guilt-free. I think that if you spend any amount of time in a cult, it does quite serious damage to you, to the point where you have hang-ups and you have what you might call fear or guilt, in residual elements of fear and guilt, potentially for the rest of your life, where you'll think that you're over it, and then someone will say something and you'll find yourself kind of almost instinctively reacting in a JW way, even though you're totally past it all. So I think that it can sometimes be an unreasonable expectation that people who've been in cults place on themselves to completely purge themselves entirely from any kind of guilt or any kind of fear. But I would say that, I don't know. I think after 5 years, you're more or less at a place where things are kind of under control and things are quite well managed, and you're on top of things. But that's just a figure I've plucked out of my head. It could be for some people that they manage to kind of find themselves on an even keel much more quickly than that, and for others it could take much longer. So that's one of the 5 questions, and there's some super chats that have come in. Corey McPherson says, happy birthday. Thank you so much, Corey. That's very generous of you. Thank you for the support of my work. And Chris says, buon compleanno, Lloyd. Have a glass of Chianti on me, or maybe a small carafe. I don't know how to pronounce carafe. Or give it to the dog to calm him down. There's something I would like to give to the dog, but it isn't that. But thank you so much for the super chat. And thank you also for any animal rights activists for not bristling at some of my comments about the dog tonight. Let's see. Big Ski Pioneer 2 says, since secularism is on the rise, are we actually seeing the Armageddon of organized religion? I don't think so. I'm not one of those atheists who says that who envisions kind of the total end of organized religion. I think that religion will always be around in some form, even organized religion. I think the real question of secularism is, can we get religion into its place? Can we kind of wrestle it into its corner where it's no longer exerting so much influence and ruining lives, or has the power to ruin lives in quite the way it does now? So that's kind of where I stand on that. So that's 2 questions, 3 more to go. Rita M says, how was the transition for you and Deanna going from 1 child to 2? I hope your darling babies are well. Rita, it was interesting actually, because you obviously, when you have 1 child, they become like your universe, and you can't imagine having enough love to have the same feelings towards another child, but you just do. And it's interesting how you kind of start to think of the older child as the older sister, and as someone who you're able to have conversations with, but maybe not the younger one, or at least that's how it is in our family, because as you saw, Jessica is now able to talk. So I have 2 girls, but one I can just cuddle for now, and the other one I can have conversations with, and that's kind of how it works in my head. But in terms of the love and affection, it just happens automatically, and you find yourself, really loving them, even though you've already got a child. It's very interesting how it works. So there's also, hi David, I was talking about you earlier. David Schmidt says, happy birthday, mate. Hope you're having a great holiday. Love to the family. Thanks so much, David, and thanks so much for the super chat. Scott Gates says, I'm hoping you might consider doing a segment on the family members who have never been Jehovah's Witnesses but are being ostracized or shunned by their involvement in this organization. So they've never been Jehovah's Witnesses, but they are being shunned by their involvement in this organization. Are we talking about people who have not been baptized? I need more information on that. I am interested in exploring more the plight of never Jehovah's Witnesses who are impacted by the organization because their wife becomes a Jehovah's Witness or their husband becomes a Jehovah's Witness, and it impacts their life in ways that they just never expected it would. I don't know whether that's what you mean, but yeah, I'm definitely interested in exploring as many angles of this horrendous cult as possible. How many questions am I down to now? I think I'm just going to do 2 more. Let's just see here. And thank you again for so many of you who've tuned in for this special birthday live stream. So Alan Page says, "Hi Lloyd, what do you like most about living in Croatia?" I like the lifestyle. I like how laid back it is. We live in a very rural location, which is very different to the kind of, because I was previously living in a fairly kind of urban stroke suburban situation in the UK, and now I'm living in the country, and it suits my creative process better to have a degree of kind of distance from the urban sprawl and to just be able to focus a bit more. And just the kind of the pace of life, I think, in Croatia suits me. But to be honest, there's good things and bad things about every country, and there are things about Croatia that annoy me. But you just get on with it, don't you? I don't imagine I'll be in Croatia for the rest of my life, but this is where I am now, and I'm making the most of it. And one more question from Mark Sheldon, who says, Lloyd, how do Jehovah's Witnesses perceive non-Jehovah's Witnesses with an intellectual disability? Do they believe they will suffer the same fate as regular non-believers at Armageddon? That's an interesting question. I think if you were to ask a Jehovah's Witness that, they would probably say something vague like, well, only Jehovah can judge people's hearts. He's going to decide how people with a mental impairment are judged at Armageddon. They'll probably say something wishy-washy like that. I haven't. In fact, it almost certainly you would find actual printed material saying something along those lines, but obviously it doesn't make any sense. The whole Armageddon teaching, in fact, doesn't make any sense. But there we go. Story of our lives. But thank you so much to all of you who have joined me for this live stream. Apologies again for the technical problems in getting it all up and running. We got there in the end. And I'm just so thrilled and touched that so many of you could make it. I hope you've enjoyed it. And thanks so much for all of the love and the kind messages. It really does mean a lot. I hope you all have a wonderful day. And as always, thank you so much for watching.